evidence of dark matter.
Welcome to Book Time with Ryan. I am Ryan, and today we'll be talking about Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I thought this was a new book when I bought it, and that's the way I kind of spoke about it when I was asking the guy at the front desk at Barnes & Noble, and then I found out I've been out for 5 years. So I'm a little late to this party, but I really like the book, and I want to go over some concepts before we talk about the book. And they're concepts I enjoy. I like this kind of book. It's kind of a thinking book. It sends you into different areas, maybe areas you don't usually think about, and generates questions for you. But here are a few examples. These are some of the things that we need to think about before I get into the book. When we're talking about dimensions, generally we often think about 2 or 3 dimensional, right? 2 dimensions flat, 3 dimensions, it's 3D. What people don't think about is a 4th dimension. In this book, 4th dimension is time. If you think about a 3D object, that is a snapshot in time of an object. You have X, Y, and Z axes, but it doesn't move, frozen in time. When you add the 4th dimension, the time axis, you have that 3-dimensional object moving through time. This thing occupying space, moving through time. This book also goes into some quantum mechanics, and it hits on Schrodinger's cat. So what is that? It's a thought experiment. And you put a cat in a box. It's a box that you can't sense anything out of. You put this cat in a box, and it has a poison capsule that would be triggered by a subatomic action, the decay of an atom, which could or could not happen. So at any moment inside this box, the cat is either alive or dead because the poison has either been triggered and has filled the container, killed the cat, or the poison hasn't been triggered and the cat is still alive. Now, we can't perceive the condition of the cat because there's no way to do that in this thought experiment. So the idea is that without our perception, without our experiencing the cat through our senses, the cat is both alive and dead until we can experience it, until we open that box and we see if it's a live cat or if it's a dead cat that comes out. And you're thinking, well, it can only be alive or dead. It's not both. And if the capsule goes off 10 minutes ago, the cat's been dead for 10 minutes. But the point here is you can't experience that. You don't know that that's what has happened because you haven't perceived it. So it is effectively alive and dead until it can be observed. So that kind of works in this book with the idea that at any moment, multiple things can happen in time. I could pick up this book and drop it. I could pick up this book and throw it in the air. I could not pick up this book. Whatever I do, whatever decision I make, or external forces that act on me, change the path that our 3-dimensional object is moving through time. And because any one of those things could happen, the thought experiment, the Schrodinger's cat, would say that all those things happened. And here we're talking about a multiverse. So we're saying that where all these things happened in one multiverse, in one universe, the multiverse being multiple universes, in one universe, I threw this book. In one universe, I never started BookTube. In one universe, I have 50,000 subscribers. That's the universe I want to be in. But that's the only thing that I want different. Actually, and that kind of plays in this book. So here's what we have in this book. We have our main character is Jason. Jason is a physicist who was on the cutting edge of physics. He impregnates a woman. She's an aspiring artist. Her name is Daniela. When they find out that she's pregnant, they keep the baby. It's a boy, and his name is Charlie, and they've been married for 15 years. Because of these changes, the fact that they're going to have to raise a son and focus on family life, Jason decides that he's going to kind of pull back from the cutting edge work that he's doing, and he is going to teach at a kind of medium level college in his area. And his wife, Daniela, also kind of pulls back on her career. Instead of being kind of a groundbreaking artist, she teaches art lessons to middle schoolers and raises their son, Charlie. They have a friend named Ryan Holder, Holder has just won a very prestigious award in neuroscience, and Jason is having dinner with his family, but Daniela says, you know what, go out and go to this little celebration thing and just stop in with Ryan and tell him, congratulations. So he does. He goes there. Basically, Ryan, who believes that Jason was the smarter of the two, they were roommates in grad school. He talks about how great his life is, and he's dating women and got $1 million grant and won this prestigious international award. And in the back of Jason's mind, he thinks about what things would have been like had he gone down that path, but he didn't. So he decides to leave, and he's going to head home. As he's leaving, he hears footsteps, and he gets jumped. And this guy who's wearing a geisha mask asks him questions about his family and about how he lives and what he calls his wife and all these questions, and is holding him at gunpoint, and eventually injects him with something, and Jason becomes unconscious. He wakes up on the floor of a lab, some kind of lab. People gather him, and he's tested, and they're worried about radiation, and they're worried about his health and whatever. So they're dragging him around, and he doesn't really know what's going on. He's really out of it. People that are around him are acting like they know who he is, that they've been friends for a long time, but he has no idea who these people are. He escapes from this facility and finds his way home, but it's not his home. It's his home, but it's not the way he remembered it. It's much nicer. It is modern. The fixtures are different. His wife's not there. There's no trace of his wife. There's no trace of Charlie, his kid. And he really doesn't know what's going on. So he tracks down Daniela. They meet up at her. She has a showing. She's actually a very successful artist. They never got married, but they met 15 years ago. 15 years ago, she also got pregnant. But in this reality, although we don't know it yet, we suspect it, Jason went with his career, and she aborted her pregnancy. This universe, she's dating Ryan, who is basically what Jason was in the other world, although they're not married and they don't have the connection that Jason and Daniela had. And things blow up from there. Some people are killed. What we find out, the Jason of this world, who we'll call Jason 2, continued to work on his project, which was basically working on superposition and quantum mechanics. In this universe, he found a way to move between multiverses. What had to happen is part of the brain had to be shut down for a period of time, so the people involved could not process what was happening, would not be able to observe the change. Ryan in that multiverse helped create a formula that basically deactivated part of the brain for a short amount of time, about an hour. And that allowed them to move through the multiverse. The way it was visualized by our characters was a long hallway with doors on either side, infinitely long, because the idea is every action or every reaction results in an infinite number of possibilities, which means an infinite number of multiverses. An infinite number of Jasons is just likely that in an infinite number of chances, somebody would figure this out. That's Jason 2. He figured it out. But Jason 2 realized that he devoted his whole life to work. And his one big mistake was not following through with Daniela, not creating a relationship with her. So he figures out a way to go to the universe where the successful family man Jason is. And that is who jumped Jason. Now Jason is sent to Jason 2's world, where he is supposedly focused on work. And in that world, some people very close to Jason are killed. And he has to figure out a way to get back to his multiverse, to get away to his universe where his Daniela is living. Jason 2 is living with Daniela because he's just kind of taken on Jason's old life. And he looks the same because of the same person, just different multiverse. What happens, and I don't want to get into too much of the detail here, because it's a great moment, I thought. Jason tries to find a way to get back. And there's a certain number of ampules they have because they tried to escape the lab because the person was holding them against their will. It's a multi-billion-dollar project. And it's clear that this is a different Jason who may not be able to help them, become successful with the project or evaluate what happened and learn from that. So they have a certain number of ampules to trigger that reaction in the brain to allow them to travel through the multiverse. And through that process, they narrow down the multiverse to the universe that would be Jason's, where Jason 2 is currently inhabiting his life. Now, I don't want to say what happens too much. I have a little bit. But I will say that there was a moment in this book. There are a number of moments in this book. There are an infinite number of moments in this book. But there's a moment in this book where I sat there thinking, oh shit, it's going to happen. This thing is going to happen. And then it did. And I couldn't stop reading it. And it was amazing. And it's better than I thought it was going to be when this thing happened. But it gets into another concept. And I'm not going to go into what exactly happened because it was a wonderful moment. But we get into game theory. What is game theory? Game theory is the idea. This is not a technical definition, but if we're engaged in some kind of game and I want to have an advantage, you are aware that I would want to have an advantage. I want to win, and I will win with any advantage I can get. You will do the same. If you know what I'm going to do, that would be one thing. But you know that I know that you might know what I'm going to do. So you think, well, if he knows that I know what he's going to do, he's going to do the opposite. But the thing is, I know that you know what I'm going to do. And that I would think, you think that I would do the opposite because of that knowledge. And you can see where this goes. It's just an infinite kind of loop of, well, you know this, and this, and I know this, and this, back and forth. So it's another thought experiment, but it goes into game theory. Where this comes into play here is just because we're dealing with our main character, Jason, who we follow from this moment in time where he gets sent to another universe, the multiverse, that does not mean that his decisions stop. It does not mean that there are not an infinite number of possibilities still spreading from him. And those infinite possibilities would still be spreading from him while he's making these decisions to try to get back to his wife. And I hope you see where this is going. Because in some cases, Jason's going to be killed on his way back home. He's never going to find her. He's going to be killed because he jumped out in the multiverse in the wrong place and he ended up in an Earth that was destroyed, or was suffering nuclear winter, or was 100 degrees below zero. Whatever it is, some will make it. And all of those Jasons will believe that Daniela is theirs, because all those Jasons branched off from that moment where he was kidnapped and sent to another multiverse. Jason 2 is aware of that. But are other Jasons aware that there might be multiple Jasons? And there's a moment where our Jason sees another Jason running through the infinite hallway, which I don't totally understand where he came from or how that happened within the hallway. He's back in town, in Chicago. And then the question is if he wants to get in touch with his wife, but he's aware that there are other Jasons. How do you do that? Because you will anticipate your own moves. And you'll anticipate you anticipating your own moves. And that's where the game theory comes into it. So there's a lot of fun stuff to think about in this book. The author, Blake Crouch, did work with a physicist from a university on that to make sure some of the concepts were correct, at least partially correct, in a way that allowed them to work for a work of fiction. But this is a love story. It's sci-fi, it's suspense, it's a thriller. I really enjoyed it. I guess it's on TV somewhere, but I don't know anything about that. But I recommend it. It was a quick read. I mean, there are 300 something pages in this, but it's just so exciting, and there are moments where you think you know where it's going, and then it goes somewhere else. And for me, there were moments where I hoped it was going to go somewhere, and then it went there, and then it went there with a sense of urgency, and I loved it. I loved it. So, Dark Matter, Blake Crouch, check it out. 5 stars for me. I really enjoyed it. I haven't read any of his stuff, but if it's all written like this, I could definitely read more. And that's it. Thanks so much for today. We are in the month of my anniversary, so I want to say happy anniversary to my wife. If you watch the intro part of this video, you will see a rare picture of my wife in the mix along with my daughter. So thanks again for joining me today, and I will see you later. Or I won't. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen in this universe, but at least one of us will connect in the future. So, thanks. Bye.